The tourbus horn screamed like a banshee as it barreled down Orange Street in Kingston. Kachi Chizzy walked directly into its path, her eyes vacant, her mind a million miles away from the danger rushing toward her. The woven basket of mangoes, guineps and star apples balanced on her head seemed to float in slow motion as time itself held its breath. Yun Tae-yang dropped his phone and sprinted across the street. His expensive Italian leather shoes pounded against the hot Jamaican asphalt. 3 seconds. The bus driver laid on the horn. 2 seconds. Tae-yang's hand shot out, grabbing Kachi's arm, yanking her toward him with desperate force. The fruit basket flew into the air, mangoes scattering like golden orbs across the pavement, guineps bouncing like marbles, star apples rolling into gutters. The tourbus roared past, missing them by mere inches, its wind whipping their clothes, the heat from its engine scorching their skin. The driver didn't even slow down. Kachi collapsed against Tae-yang's chest, her body trembling violently. Around them, Kingston erupted. Street vendors gasped. Someone screamed, "Lord Jesus Christ, that man just saved her life!" Car horns honked. Reggae music from a nearby sound system seemed to pause in respect. The scattered fruit lay crushed under passing tires, juice staining the concrete like spilled blood. Before we continue, if you're enjoying this story, please hit that like button, subscribe to our channel and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from and what time it is in your location right now. Your support keeps these stories coming. Tae-yang's heart hammered against his ribs. He'd just saved a stranger's life, but his own legs were shaking from the adrenaline and the terrifying proximity of death. Another second, maybe half a second, and they'd both have been crushed under those wheels. He looked down at the woman in his arms. She was staring at the scattered fruit on the road, her eyes wide with shock. Some mangoes had been flattened by passing vehicles. Street children had appeared from nowhere, gathering what they could carry and disappearing into alleyways. But this near-death collision was only the beginning of a story that would change 3 lives forever. To understand how a Korean mafia boss and a struggling Jamaican fruit seller ended up in this moment, we need to go back 7 days. Kachi's eyes opened in the darkness at 4:47 in the morning, 3 minutes before her 5 o'clock a.m. alarm. This was her body's routine now, waking from anxiety before the clock could. In the cramped zinc roof house in Trenchtown, her 6-year-old niece, Zara, slept peacefully beside her, small chest rising and falling in innocent rhythm. Kachi sat up carefully on the thin mattress, her back aching from the broken springs beneath. She counted the Jamaican dollars she'd hidden inside her pillow, just $3,200. Yesterday's fruit sales, barely enough for today's supplies, and nowhere close to what she desperately needed. On the rickety wooden table, 3 papers haunted her. The clinic appointment reminder, just $15,000 needed for Zara's leukemia treatment at University Hospital. The landlord's eviction warning, just $12,000 overdue, 3rd and final notice. And the letter from Kingston Primary School, $85,000 in outstanding fees for 3 full terms. Final notice, due Friday. Friday was tomorrow. Kachi's hands shook as she folded the papers and hid them before Zara could wake. Childhood leukemia had invaded her niece's life 2 years ago, 6 months after Kachi's sister Amara died, giving birth to complications the free clinic couldn't handle. Now every day was a financial calculation between survival and medical necessity. The chemotherapy treatments were mandatory. Without them, Zara's small body would shut down, her immune system collapsing, her organs failing. But Kachi had already missed 2 appointments this month. The clinic had called yesterday. If Zara didn't come in by Monday, They'd report the case to child services. Kachi could lose her niece, the only family she had left in the world. "Auntie Kachi," Zara's voice was soft in the darkness. "Are we going to the hospital today?" Kachi forced a smile she didn't feel. "Not today, my love. Maybe next week." The lie tasted bitter on her tongue. There would be no next week without money. No treatment. No school. Possibly no future. They ate breakfast together. Hard dough bread, soaked in mint tea with a spoon of condensed milk that was supposed to last the week. Zara talked about her lessons, about her best friend Shanique, about her dream of becoming a nurse someday so she could help other sick children. Kachi listened, her heart breaking at the beautiful innocence that didn't understand how close to the edge they were living. At 6:30 in the morning, Kachi loaded her woven basket with fruit, 40 Julie mangoes, 3 dozen guineps, 2 dozen star apples, and a handful of sweet sops she'd bought on credit from Miss Carmen at Coronation Market, promising to pay by evening. She lifted the basket onto her head, the weight settling into the permanent groove in her skull that had formed over 5 years of hawking, and headed toward New Kingston, where tourists and office workers paid better prices. The streets were already choked with traffic. Taxis honked aggressively. Handcart men weaved through impossible gaps. Higglers called out their wares in sing-song patois. And Kingston pulsed with its characteristic chaotic energy. Kachi walked the familiar route, calling out her sales pitch in the melodic Jamaican accent that tourists loved. "Sweet mango, Julie mango, guinep and star apple, come buy." Men stopped to buy from her. They always did. At 25, Kachi was stunning in that way that made people turn and stare. Dark skin that glowed like polished mahogany in the Caribbean sun. Natural hair in thick coils and twists that cascaded down her back when she let it loose. Thick thighs that moved with unconscious grace. Curved, hips that swayed with each step. A full, prominent backside that made men call out compliments and made women suck their teeth with envy. She wore a simple yellow cotton dress that hugged her curves, not tight, not revealing, just fitted enough to show the body God gave her. Despite her poverty, despite selling fruit on the street, Kachi carried herself with dignity. Her mother had taught her that before the cancer took her, "You can be poor and still have pride. Don't let anyone make you feel small." By noon, Kachi had sold only 8 mangoes and a handful of guineps, $800. The sun beat down mercilessly. Hunger gnawed at her stomach, but she couldn't afford to eat her own goods. 1,000 thoughts spun in her mind: the clinic appointment, the school fees, the landlord's threat to put their things on the street, Zara's pale face that morning, the way her niece had complained of dizziness when she stood up. Wednesday brought worse news. When Zara returned from school, tears streaked her small face. She clutched a letter in her trembling hands. The principal had sent her home. No more classes until all fees were cleared. The letter was cold, bureaucratic, final. That night they cried together in their small zinc house, the roof rattling with evening rain, both of them shaking with sobs that seemed to have no end. Thursday arrived with cruel irony. Zara's skin looked wrong, too pale, almost grey like ash. She moved slowly, complained of dizziness and nausea, couldn't keep down the porridge Kachi made for breakfast. Kachi recognized the signs immediately. Her niece's white blood cell count was dangerous. The chemotherapy was overdue. Zara's body was losing the fight. "Auntie, I don't feel good," Zara whispered, her small voice breaking. I know, baby. We'll go to the clinic soon, I promise. Another lie. Another broken promise. Kachi had $3,200 to her name and a basket of fruit that was already starting to soften in the heat. The math was impossible. The clinic cost $15,000. The school wanted $85,000. Rent was $12,000. Overdue. And Zara needed treatment today, not tomorrow, not next week, not when Kachi finally scraped together enough money. Today. Friday morning, Kachi woke with a weight of failure crushing her chest like she was drowning on dry land. She loaded her fruit basket with mechanical movements, her mind already defeated, her spirit already broken. By afternoon, she'd sold only 6 pieces of fruit. The rest was growing soft, attracting flies, losing value with every passing hour. As she walked through New Kingston past the gleaming bank buildings and expensive hotels, where people who'd never worried about medical bills came and went, her mind spiraled into dark places. How had her life become this desperate? She remembered Zara's father Marcus, the man who'd promised to take care of his daughter and then disappeared the day after Amara's funeral. She remembered her own dreams, finishing secondary school, going to community college, becoming a teacher, being something more than a street vendor selling fruit to tourists. She remembered when hope felt possible now. Walking through Kingston with unsold fruit and empty pockets and a dying niece at home, Kachi felt hope die. Her feet moved automatically, but her mind was elsewhere, trapped in calculations that had no solution, drowning in problems that had no answers, sinking into despair so deep she couldn't see light anymore. She didn't even notice when she stepped off the curb, didn't see the tour bus, didn't hear the horn, didn't feel anything except the crushing weight of failure, until strong hands grabbed her and yanked her backward. That same Friday morning, Yoon Tae-yang sat in the back of his black Mercedes S-Class, scrolling through encrypted messages on his phone as his driver and bodyguard, Park Ji-woo, navigated Kingston traffic. Tae-yang was in Jamaica on business, expanding his organization's Caribbean operations, establishing new shipping routes through Jamaica's ports, meeting with local partners who controlled the island's underground economy. At 32 years old, he controlled a significant portion of Seoul's criminal underworld. Ports, shipping, nightclubs, protection. His net worth exceeded $500 million. He wore a custom-tailored black Armani suit that cost more than most Jamaicans earned in a year. His Patek Philippe watch could have paid for a house. None of it made him happy. His phone buzzed, a message from his older sister in Seoul. Tae-yang when are you settling down? Oma asks about grandchildren every day. You're 32. Stop playing gangster and find a wife. Tae-yang sighed. His sister meant well, but she didn't understand. He'd dated plenty of women. Beautiful women from wealthy families, socialites who moved in Korea's elite circles, women who wanted the lifestyle he could provide. Every relationship felt transactional. They loved what he could give them. The luxury apartments, the designer clothes, the access to power. But they didn't love him. They loved Yoon Tae-yang, the crime boss, not Tae-yang, the man who sometimes woke up at 3 a.m. wondering if this was all his life would ever be. Boss, Ji-woo said in Korean, glancing in the rearview mirror. The meeting with the Jamaican contacts is at 2 p.m. You want me to take you straight to the hotel? No, Tae-yang replied, also in Korean. Pull over somewhere. I want to walk. Ji-woo's eyebrows rose. Boss, this isn't Seoul. We don't know the area. It could be dangerous. Everything I do is dangerous, Tae-yang interrupted, but not unkindly. That's the job. Pull over. This was Tae Yang's ritual wherever he traveled, finding a public space, buying a local newspaper, sitting on a bench and watching life unfold around him. It grounded him, reminded him that beneath the expensive suits and the blood money and the violence, he was still human, still just a man who could sit on a park bench and read about local politics and watch people live their ordinary lives. New Kingston bustled with Friday energy. Tae Yang walked to a street corner near Emancipation Park, bought a newspaper, the Jamaica Gleaner, from a vendor who looked shocked that this well-dressed Asian man spoke English, and settled onto a public bench under a mango tree. The heat was oppressive, nothing like Seoul's humidity. The music was everywhere, reggae and dancehall pulsing from car stereos and shop speakers. People moved with rhythm, like dancing was coded into their DNA, women in bright colors, men in sharp shoes despite the heat, children running between street vendors, life chaotic and vibrant and completely unconcerned with the Korean gangster reading their newspaper. Tae Yang found it beautiful. 20 minutes later, he looked up from an article about Caribbean trade policy and noticed movement across the street. A woman was walking along the roadside, a woven basket of colorful fruit balanced expertly on her head. The basket seemed impossibly large, impossibly heavy, but she carried it with the ease of long practice, but something was wrong. Her eyes were unfocused, distant, seeing nothing. She moved mechanically, like someone sleepwalking through a nightmare, like someone whose mind had left their body behind. Tae Yang had seen that look before, in Seoul, on the faces of people who'd given up, who'd decided that dying was easier than living. His attention sharpened. The woman was walking directly into the street, stepping off the curb without looking, without seeing, without caring. A tour bus, bright yellow with Island Paradise Tours painted on the side, barreled down Orange Street, its horn blaring aggressive warnings. Other pedestrians jumped back, shouting warnings in patois Tae Yang didn't understand. The woman kept walking, completely unaware. Time crystallized. Tae Yang's newspaper fell from his hands. His body moved before his brain fully processed the danger. He sprinted across the street, dodging a taxi, his expensive Italian shoes pounding hot asphalt. 3 seconds. The bus horn screamed like a wounded animal. 2 seconds. Tae Yang's hand shot out. 1 second. He grabbed the woman's arm and yanked her toward him with desperate force, spinning her away from death. The basket flew into the air. Fruit exploded across the street like a tropical grenade, mangoes rolling, guineps scattering, star apples bouncing. The tour bus roared past, so close that Tae Yang felt its heat scorch his face, felt its wind whip his suit jacket, felt the nearness of death in his bones. The woman collapsed against his chest, her entire body trembling violently. Tae Yang's heart hammered against his ribs. In 10 years of running a criminal organization, he'd been shot at, stabbed, ambushed by rival gangs, but nothing had made his hands shake like this. The realization that he'd been half a second away from watching someone die, half a second away from failing to save her. Around them, the street erupted, people shouting in patois, car horns honking, a woman screaming, "Jesus Christ, him, save her! That foreign man, just save her life!" Tae Yang ignored all of it. He looked down at the woman in his arms. She was beautiful, not in the polished, manufactured way of the Seoul socialites he dated, but in a raw, natural way that stopped his breath. Dark skin that glowed with health despite obvious poverty. Thick curves that his hands could feel trembling beneath the thin cotton dress. natural hair in gorgeous coils, full lips parted in shock. But it was her eyes that destroyed him, wide, devastated, staring at the ruined fruit scattered across the road. "Are you okay?" Tae-yang asked in English, his Korean accent thick. "Miss, are you hurt?" Kachi couldn't speak. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She just stared at the crushed mangoes, the guineps being scooped up by street children, the star apples rolling into gutters, her entire day's investment. Gone. The money she owed Miss Carmen. The money she needed for Zara. The money that might have kept them from being evicted, all of it scattered and crushed and stolen on the dirty Kingston street. Tears began streaming down her face. Hot, silent tears that fell without sobbing because she was too shocked to even cry properly. Tae-yang felt something crack open in his chest. Something he'd kept locked away for 10 years, of violence and money and emptiness. "Come," he said gently, his hand still supporting her elbow. "You're in shock. Let me help you." Ji-woo appeared, having abandoned the Mercedes in traffic to reach his boss. "Sir, are you—" "I'm fine," Tae-yang said in Korean. Then back to English to the trembling woman. "My car is just there. Please, sit down. Water. You need water." Kachi let herself be guided because her legs weren't working properly, because her mind couldn't process what had just happened, because this well-dressed stranger with the kind eyes and the foreign accent had just saved her life and she didn't even know his name. The Mercedes was like stepping into a different world. Air conditioning, leather seats, the scent of expensive cologne, everything clean and cool and impossibly far from her reality. Ji-woo handed Tae-yang a bottle of water, expensive imported water that probably cost more than Kachi made in a day. Tae-yang opened it and handed it to her. Her hands shook so badly she could barely hold it. I'm so sorry," Kachi finally managed, her voice breaking, her Jamaican accent thick with emotion. "My fruit. All my fruit. I have to pay Miss Carmen by tonight, or she won't give me credit anymore. And I need the credit because I can't afford to buy stock outright. And without stock, I can't sell. And without selling, I can't—" She stopped, realizing she was babbling to a complete stranger, realizing she probably sounded crazy. "Forget the fruit," Tae-yang said firmly but kindly. "You almost died. What were you thinking about so deeply that you didn't see that bus?" Kachi looked at this well-dressed stranger who'd just saved her life. His suit probably cost more than she earned in 6 months. His watch could have paid Zara's medical bills. He existed in a different universe, one where problems had solutions and money removed obstacles. And something inside Kachi broke. Maybe it was the shock of nearly dying. Maybe it was his genuine concern, the way he looked at her like she mattered, like she was a person instead of just another poor black woman selling fruit on the street. Maybe it was simply that she'd been holding everything inside for so long that the dam finally cracked. The words began pouring out, unstoppable, raw, desperate. She told him everything, about Zara's leukemia diagnosis 2 years ago, about her sister Amara dying in childbirth because the free clinic didn't have the resources to handle complications, about becoming a 23-year-old guardian to a sick infant overnight, about the weekly chemotherapy treatments that cost $15,000 each time, about the clinic appointments she'd missed because she couldn't afford them, about Marcus, Zara's father, the man who'd promised to help and then disappeared the day after the funeral, blocking her number, moving to Montego Bay, leaving them with nothing. About the school fees, 3 full terms unpaid, $85,000 total, final notice. About Zara being sent home from school, about the landlord threatening eviction, about the rent that was 2 months overdue, about the fruit selling that barely covered food, about skipping meals so Zara could eat, about the crushing, suffocating weight of trying to keep a sick child alive on $3,000 a day, about the constant fear that kept her awake at night, about the guilt, the crushing, soul-destroying guilt of failing the one person who depended on her, about waking up this morning and realizing she couldn't do it anymore, about walking through New Kingston in a dissociative fog, about not caring if the bus hit her, because at least then Zara would go into the system, get proper care, have a chance. When Kachi finished, she was sobbing, quietly, embarrassed to have shared so much with a complete stranger. A foreign stranger at that, who probably thought she was crazy or pathetic, or trying to scam him. "I don't know why I told you all this," she whispered, wiping her face with the back of her hand. "You must think I'm mad." Tae-yang was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. "No," he said quietly. "I think you're incredibly strong. Stronger than anyone should have to be. And I think you needed someone to listen." He made a decision that would change everything. "Where do you live? I'm taking you home," Kachi tried to protest. She couldn't accept a ride from a stranger, especially not in a car that cost more than she'd earn in 10 lifetimes. But Tae-yang insisted with gentle firmness, and Kachi was too exhausted, too emotionally drained, too shattered to argue. She gave directions to Trenchtown. As Ji-woo drove, Tae-yang observed the stark transformation of Kingston, from the gleaming bank towers and luxury hotels of New Kingston to the congested, poverty-dense streets of Trenchtown. Zinc roof houses pressed together like sardines, dirt roads rutted with potholes, goats wandering freely, children playing in trash-strewn yards. The contrast was jarring, a physical manifestation of Jamaica's brutal inequality. When the Mercedes pulled into the narrow lane where Kachi lived, the entire neighborhood seemed to freeze. A car like that didn't come to places like this, ever. People stopped mid-conversation, children stopped playing, women cooking in outdoor kitchens turned to stare. A black Mercedes with tinted windows and a well-dressed Asian man inside could only mean one thing: police, trouble, or something even worse. Tae-yang stepped out, ignoring the attention completely, focusing only on making sure Kachi was steady on her feet. Before he could say goodbye, a small figure burst from the zinc roof house. "Auntie Kachi! Auntie Kachi!" Zara ran toward them, her small braids bouncing, her thin legs pumping. Then she stopped abruptly when she saw Tae-yang. Her eyes growing impossibly wide, but Zara had been raised with manners, and even in her shock, she didn't forget them. "Good afternoon, sir," she said politely, her small voice clear. Tae-yang was instantly charmed. "Good afternoon. You must be Zara. Your auntie has told me about you." Kachi made introductions. "Zara, this is... I'm sorry, I don't even know your name." "Yun Tae-yang," he said, pronouncing it slowly so she could hear each syllable. "But you can call me Tae-yang." "Zara, Mr. Tae-yang saved my life today. He also brought me home safely." Zara's eyes grew even wider. She turned to Tae-yang, her young face suddenly serious beyond her 6 years. "Thank you, sir. Thank you for saving my auntie. She's all I have in the whole world." The simple, heartfelt words hit Tae-yang harder than any business negotiation, any gang confrontation, any threat he'd ever faced. This little girl, sick, poor, already facing more hardship than most adults, thanking him with such sincerity. An impulse seized him. Something he'd never felt before, a desperate need to help, to fix, to make something right in a world where he usually made things wrong. He reached into his suit jacket and pulled out his wallet. Inside was a thick stack of US dollars, the currency that worked everywhere, that had real value beyond Jamaican dollars. He pulled out 10 bills, $100 each, $1,000 total. He knelt to Zara's level and handed her the money. "This is for you and your auntie, for being such a brave, well-mannered girl." Kachi's eyes widened in shock. "Sir, no, we can't accept—" "Please," Tae-yang interrupted gently, let me do this. You've both been through enough." Zara looked at her aunt for permission. Kachi nodded through fresh tears, overwhelmed. Zara accepted the money carefully, reverently, as if it might evaporate in her small hands. "Thank you, sir. God bless you." Tae-yang bid them goodbye and returned to his car. As Ji-woo navigated out of the congested neighborhood, Tae-yang found himself looking back through the rear window, watching Kachi and Zara until they disappeared from view. That night, in his luxury suite at the Jamaica Pegasus Hotel overlooking Kingston Harbor, Tae-yang couldn't sleep. He stood on the balcony, whiskey in hand, watching the city lights below, replaying the day's events. Kachi's desperate tears, Zara's trusting eyes, the crushing poverty he'd witnessed. The fact that medical care and school fees, things he could pay without checking his account balance, represented life or death stakes for them. Around 3 a.m. he gave up on sleep and sat in the suite's living room. The city sprawled below him, thousands of lights representing thousands of lives. He thought about all the women his sister had tried to set him up with back in Seoul. Wealthy socialites who spent $1,000 on manicures without blinking. Then he thought about Kachi, who'd lost that same amount in fruit and looked devastated. There was something about her dignity in hardship, her fierce love for her niece, her honest vulnerability, the way she'd broken down and told him everything, trusting a complete stranger with her deepest fears. It had lodged itself in his mind and wouldn't let go. By sunrise, Tae-yang had made a decision. He called his second-in-command back in Seoul. "I'm extending my stay in Jamaica," he said in Korean. "Indefinitely. Handle the Seoul operations. I'll be here for a while." Kachi and Zara were outside their zinc house the next morning, using a small coal stove to fry plantains for breakfast, when an expensive black Mercedes pulled into the lane again. Kachi looked up from turning the plantains and froze in disbelief. "Mr. Tae-yang?" Her voice was barely above a whisper. "What? Why are you here?" Tae-yang stepped out of the car, dressed more casually today, dark jeans, a simple white linen shirt, leather loafers. But even his casual clothes screamed money. "Good morning," he said, smiling. "I hope I'm not intruding. I couldn't stop thinking about you both. I wanted to check if you're okay." Neighbors were already gathering, whispering, staring. The foreign man was back. In Trench Town. Again. Kachi invited him into their small house, embarrassed by its condition but deeply touched by his concern. The zinc roof, the concrete floor, the single room that served as bedroom, living room and kitchen, the handmade furniture cobbled together from scrap wood, the thin curtain that separated Zara's sleeping area from the rest. But Tae-yang didn't seem to see any of that. He sat on their worn sofa and talked with them like they were old friends. Zara, her shyness, overcome by excitement, chattered happily about her school, when she could attend, about her lessons, her dreams of becoming a nurse someday, her favorite subjects. "A nurse?" Tae-yang asked, impressed. "That's wonderful, you must be very smart." "She's the best in her class," Kachi said proudly. "When she can attend." The words hung heavy in the air, the reminder of the school fees, the medical treatment, the endless struggle. Taeyang spent hours with them. He learned more about Kachi's background, how she'd studied through secondary school but couldn't afford sixth form, how she'd met a boy at 17 who'd promised her the world and given her nothing but disappointment, how her sister Amara had been her best friend, her only family after their mother died, how she'd promised Amara, in those final moments before the hemorrhaging took her, that she'd raise Zara right, keep her safe, give her opportunities, how she'd been failing at that promise every single day since. "You're not failing," Taeyang said quietly. "You're surviving impossible circumstances. There's a difference." Kachi and Zara insisted he eat with them. The fried plantains were simple, served with tinned mackerel and hard dough bread. But Taeyang ate with genuine appreciation, praising the food until Zara beamed with pride. "My auntie's the best cook in all of Kingston," she declared. Taeyang stayed the entire day. He played dominoes with Zara using a battered set, missing 3 pieces. He helped Kachi wash clothes in the outdoor basin. He sat on the stoop and talked about nothing important: Korean food, Jamaican music, the heat, the beauty of Kingston despite its poverty. By evening, when Taeyang finally left, something fundamental had shifted. He drove back to his luxury hotel with a lightness in his chest he hadn't felt in years. Kachi watched his car disappear down the lane, wondering if this extraordinary man would return or if this had been a beautiful, brief dream. But Taeyang returned. The next day. And the next. And the next. Within a week, his visits became routine. He'd show up unannounced, always bringing something: groceries, clothes for Zara, medical supplies, toys. But more than the gifts, he brought his presence, his attention, his genuine care. Within 2 weeks, Taeyang had taken concrete action. He paid Zara's school fees, the full $85,000 in cash at the principal's office, watching the woman's jaw drop as he counted out the bills. Then he arranged for Zara to attend one of Kingston's finest private schools, Hillel Academy, on a full scholarship he personally established and funded. "She deserves the best education," Taeyang told Kachi when she protested it was too much. He took Kachi and Zara to University Hospital, sitting patiently through Zara's consultation with Jamaica's top pediatric oncologist, a doctor he'd flown in from Miami specifically for this case. The doctor arranged a comprehensive treatment plan, including experimental therapies not available in Jamaica's public system. Taeyang set up a medical trust fund with US $100,000, ensuring Zara would have treatment for years, regardless of what happened. "Why are you doing all this?" Kachi asked him one afternoon, overwhelmed by his generosity. "Because I can," Taeyang answered simply. "And because you deserve better than constant struggle. Both of you." But Taeyang understood something crucial. Kachi needed sustainable income, not just handouts. He found a location in Halfway Tree, a busy commercial area, and transformed it into a modern fruit shop. Refrigeration, proper displays, a small juice bar, commercial equipment. He hired a business consultant to teach Kachi operations, accounting, inventory management. "This is yours," he told Kachi as she stood in the gleaming new shop, tears streaming down her face. "Build something lasting for yourself and Zara." Within weeks, Kachi wasn't just selling fruit. She was making fresh juices, fruit salads, smoothies. Products that commanded higher prices and profit margins. Her business consultant helped her develop recipes, price strategically, build a customer base. For the first time in her life, Kachi wasn't just surviving. she was building. Tae-yang also moved them out of Trench Town, a lovely 3-bedroom apartment in a safe, clean complex in New Kingston. 1 year's rent paid in full. The apartment had a real kitchen, a bathroom with hot water, bedrooms with actual beds and closets, air conditioning, a small balcony where Zara could play. The first night in their new home, Kachi and Zara cried together, overwhelmed by how drastically their lives had changed in just over a month. But the most significant change was emotional. Tae-yang found himself thinking about Kachi constantly, her quiet strength, her warm laugh, the way she mothered Zara with such fierce devotion. He found excuses to visit the fruit shop daily, ostensibly to check on business operations, but really just to see Kachi smile when he walked through the door. Zara had claimed Tae-yang completely as her own. She called him Uncle Tae-yang and talked about him constantly at her new school. When he visited, she ran to him with homework questions, stories about her day, dreams she'd dreamed. Tae-yang found himself loving this role, being needed, being important to someone in ways that had nothing to do with his money or his power. Kachi tried to maintain proper boundaries, reminding herself that Tae-yang was her benefactor, nothing more. But she couldn't deny her growing feelings. When he was around, she felt safe for the first time in years. His kindness wasn't performative, it was genuine. He remembered Zara's favorite fruits. He brought Kachi's preferred sorrel drink without asking. He laughed at their inside jokes about Jamaican sayings he didn't understand. 3 months after their first meeting, Tae-yang took Kachi and Zara to Devon House for ice cream, then to the National Gallery to see Jamaican art. As they walked and laughed together, other visitors watched them with curious smiles. They looked like a perfect family. That afternoon, back at Kachi's apartment, after Zara went to her room to do homework, Tae-yang took Kachi's hand. His heart pounded like he was about to negotiate with a rival gang. "I need to tell you something," he began. "These past months have been the happiest of my life, not because of anything I've given you, but because of what you've given me. Purpose, joy, family." Kachi's breath caught. "Kachi, I love Zara as if she were my own daughter," he continued passionately. "I don't care about her biological father or the past. I want to be her father officially, and I want to be your husband. I want to wake up every day knowing I get to love you both forever." Tears streamed down Kachi's face, but these were tears of joy. "I love you too," she whispered. "I've tried not to, tried to tell myself it was gratitude, but it's not, it's real. You're the most incredible man I've ever known, not because of your wealth, but because of your heart." They embraced, and in that moment both felt the absolute rightness of their connection. This wasn't a fairy tale, it was something better. Two people who genuinely saw and valued each other, choosing to build a life together. When they told Zara that evening, she screamed with joy and jumped up and down. "Does this mean Uncle Tae-yang will be my daddy?" "Yes," Tae-yang said, kneeling to her level. "If you'll have me." Zara threw herself into his arms. "I've always wanted a daddy. God answered my prayers." And Yoon Tae-yang, crime boss, millionaire, feared throughout Seoul's underworld, cried. Because a sick 6-year-old Jamaican girl had just given him something no amount of money or power ever could. A family. A purpose. A reason to be better. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to our channel, hit that like button, and turn on notifications so you never miss our stories. Drop a comment below and tell us, what lesson did you learn from Kachi and Tae-yang's journey? Have you ever experienced unexpected kindness that changed your life? Share your stories with us. Remember, your current situation is not your final destination. Keep fighting, keep hoping, keep moving forward. You never know when your breakthrough might be just one step away. Until next time, stay blessed.